Is it better to buy to SA or better to rent to SA? Buying a property and advertising on Airbnb or renting a property and advertising on Airbnb? Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to both strategies. Let's start with buy to SA. Now, if you're buying a property as an investment over a long period of time or longer period of time, you are going to get capital appreciation. So the property is going to go up in value. One of the other benefits with that is that you can then refinance over the next 5, 10, 15 years or 20 years, or actually really as long as you have that property, as long as it keeps going up in value, meaning you can pull money out to have as cash or to reinvest in other properties or other deals. Now, the disadvantage to buying a property is you are going to have a deposit sum of an amount which will depend on the value of the property. So let's say around about buy-to-let figures on a mortgage is, let's say, 25% of the value of the property. So £100,000 property, you're going to have to find 25 grand from somewhere, and then obviously it increases at 200, 300, 400, 500. You're going to have to get that money from somewhere. Now, if we're looking at the rent to SA model, renting a property to put it onto Airbnb, there's no big deposit needed. Now, with both models, they're both cash flow really well. You're going to keep a lot more cash every month by doing a rent to SA than you are with a buy to SA, because you haven't had to put a huge deposit in at the start. You will have to pay a first month's rent, you will have to pay a deposit, and you will have to furnish the property. But it will pay that back within a few months, if not sooner, because you haven't got that big outlay of a deposit at the start of 25% when you're buying a property. You haven't had to go through all the credit checks. You haven't had to have a business set up and everything else that's involved with buying a property. You sort of get started a lot quicker with a smaller amount of money, and you make more money every month. Having said that, my view has always been that you start with rent to SA, and when you get enough money, you move to buy to SA, because it is good in the long run to have the property going up in value. It is good to have that opportunity to refinance and pull money out. It is good to have an actual asset that's there, that's physical, that is yours, compared to a rental property where your agreement is between you and the landlord. There's benefits and disadvantages to both strategies. In the long run, I would suggest buying a property to rent out on Airbnb, because long term there's more advantages. In the short term, to get started and to make some good cash flow, you can then start buying properties. Start with the rent to SA model. Let's do a comparison between a buy to SA and a rent to SA. Let's use the example of a 2-bedroom house that costs, for argument's sake, £100,000. If you're doing buy to SA, you're going to have to put down around about 25% deposit. 25% of £100,000, £25,000. The property is then going to go up in value. You will have the opportunity to refinance. The way it will look month on month is you're going to get your money from Airbnb, Booking.com, whichever platform you're advertising on. You're then going to pay your mortgage, pay your bills, and be left over with a chunk of money. Now, if you are doing rent to SA on the same 2-bedroom house, you're going to pay the first month's rent, which is going to vary depending on where you are in the UK. You're going to pay a deposit, which is about 5 weeks rent, and then you're going to pay to furnish the property. If you're using a 2-bedroom house as the example, you're going to put sofas, TVs, for the lounge downstairs, maybe a rug, coffee table and artwork. Then in the kitchen, you're going to kit it out exactly like what your own kitchen has at home. And then your bedrooms, beds, wardrobes, artwork, TVs and things. For a 2-bedroom house, it's probably going to cost you around 5,000 to 7,000. In terms of how quickly you'll get that money back on a rent to SA, within a few months you'll get that money back. But you don't own the home, so it's not your asset. You are just making good cash flow every month. To compare the two, what I would suggest, if you're starting off and you don't have a huge amount of capital, start off with a rent to SA and then move on to the buy to SA when you've got a bit more cash reserves.